Hey everybody, welcome to What the Flick. It's John Iadarola, Johnny Pie, Alonso, Duralde, who likes pie, Ben Mankiewicz.
What's your position on pie?
I love pie.
Who doesn't?
My wife doesn't love pie. I think I like a baked pie better than a fresh fruit pie. I don't know, I feel like that's somehow sacrilegious.
I think I'm with you on that one.
I like the top crust.
Yeah.
I like to see it. Anyway.
I don't like to rule out any pie.
Yeah, well,
I'm moving strangely toward rhubarb as an adult, which I never thought I would.
It's ridiculous shame. True Detective season 2, season 1, of course, revelatory. It was just so right from the start hit with this wave of intense drama, of breakthrough storytelling, of being confused, but I think loving your confusion.
Sure.
Like you were like, what is happening? No, what is happening? You know?
You make it sound good.
I just thought...
You need to see it.
I do have to admit that I'm coming into these reviews having not watched the first season. Of course, this is one of the shows, the sort of new breed of change the cast every season shows where you don't necessarily have to have.
Oh, you don't have to have it in any way.
Yeah, but I do plan on catching up because, of course, we're going to want to, throughout the course of this season, sort of refer back and compare and stuff. So I want to catch up soon.
Well, I think that's what I'm getting at. Is I think the comparisons will hurt this show, but I think it's since the first one, since it really doesn't matter in any way that you've seen the first one, that we need to make every effort to.
I think one episode in might be a little premature to start saying whether or not this is living up to season 1 or not.
But I think it's like, I mean, it's almost like saying, is this as good as Band of Brothers? I mean, it is a different show, a different cast, a different setting, different director, different energy, different feel, different everything.
Same writer.
Same writer, same writer, but a different, but structurally a very different show. And that show really about two people. This one is we apparently we're leaving Taylor Kitsch out of this. This one really about
Taylor Kitsch cannot get a break.
Yeah, you take a look at this and you're confused, but you like your confusion.
So I'll start because I've been talking. I very much liked this. I think that it's very hard not to say, well, it didn't have the emotional impact of the beginning of the first season, but as I said, I don't think that's quite fair. I am very into these characters, and I was very surprised at some of the reviews, which were fairly harsh.
Yeah, I don't get that. I think that they're setting up, it's different, and it's not going to be, the structure isn't going to be sort of like the past and the present, the way that the season 1 was. But I like the whole sort of, little, not even a hotbed of vice. It's this little sort of minor second tier, area of vice with this little town of Vinci, which is basically the city of industry, I guess.
Probably city of industry, yeah.
And just the various machinations going on. I mean, there is, I guess, some shout out to the past in terms of Colin Farrell and his wife and their kid and his relationship with Vince Vaughn. Ray and Frank. But I think that I'll get him. I'll get him down anyway. But no, I'm very engaged. I think that these characters are all interestingly flawed in different ways, and it's going to be kind of cool to see how these three messes are going to come together to sort of investigate the crime this time.
Yeah, I like the little vignettes into their life that initially seem kind of perhaps irrelevant, like less so for some. Like some of Annie's stuff, so far her relationship with her sister doesn't seem particularly significant in terms of any connection to the main plot. But Colin Farrell, obviously, his prior connection to Semyon is going to be important going forward. It's interesting how they tied together the threads at the end.
Who's Semyon?
Semyon is Vince Vaughn.
Vince Vaughn.
Oh,
that's his last name, yeah.
Right.
And it's the sort of opening episode that I think will appreciate more the second time when you watch it, when rewatching the season, where much of their motivations and the ways that they're going about their day doesn't really mean much to us now, but we're going to be able to place it in a context with the characters later. Yeah,
we are getting, like the first season you mentioned, Alonso, we're getting the two timelines, but mostly we're getting the current timeline.
Yeah.
Like they're not trying to, well, I guess they are going to try, I guess they are here to solve a murder, but it's, anyway, it lacks the mystery of the first one, and that's fine. I thought this is going to be a contrived effort to get these three cops from three different jurisdictions. One of the what's her name? Annie?
Yes.
To get Annie to that spot, I thought they were L.A. County Sheriff's deputies. Turns out they're Ventura County Sheriff's deputies. For those people who aren't in Los Angeles, that's the county. Mm-hmm. It's a huge county right above, just north of Los Angeles, just sort of north of Malibu where that county starts. And then, we got a highway patrol cop in Taylor Kitsch, and then the Vinci detective in Colin Farrell. But the way that happened, I thought was really very skillfully done, that these three characters that we've been learning about, these three tortured police officers, tortured souls, and then all of a sudden there they are at 2:30 in the morning in the same place, and it made perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's very organic, and I'm sorry, I won't cut you off, but I also like that we had a hint of this in the first season in terms of a crime that unravels a larger conspiracy, which didn't wind up being as big a deal as it turned out. It seemed to promise more than it delivered. Like the whole with the cult and the government of
this
Louisiana.
feels like it's going to be a bigger conspiracy.
This feels like it's a bigger conspiracy because we see the players on the board and we realize, okay, there's this land business and there's these shenanigans and this railway and da-da-da. And I'll tell you, if this show fucks up light rail in California, I'll be pissed off because I want a bullet train to San Francisco, goddammit.
2026. Yeah, great.
Anytime now.
But even at the same time that it might be a sort of larger conspiracy, it's still, like you were saying, this is not a hotbed of vice. This is kind of a nothing city. And even like Vince Vaughn, like the big economic player in this, I mean, yeah, he's going to have some housing deals, but he's still trying to break in himself to this larger world. Like that's why he's making the mob connections. Like the connection that each of the sort of law figures has to the crime so far, some are much closer tied. Like I don't really get why Annie is particularly interested in this. I mean, it's her job, she has to pursue it, but she doesn't have the same connection that, for instance, Colin Farrell is going to have. Colin Farrell obviously tied in multiple ways. And it was interesting too that like the one moment of levity, like none of these characters really has much that they like in their life. Vince Vaughn has the healthiest family life so far. The rest, their family life is ruined in various ways. But the one moment of levity is a Weekend at Bernie's reference, basically.
That's
throughout the entire thing.
Yeah. Donk. Yeah, that's right.
I will butt fuck your father's corpse on the lawn with your mother's headless body. Thank you, Colin Farrell.
Well, let's talk about Colin Farrell, because there was when he is drinking and struggling, and a guy who said, had his wife viciously attacked, and then got information from Vince Vaughn to vigilante it up and settle it. But still, Vince Vaughn, a great suggestion. You don't owe me anything for it. This was beyond the pale, so I'm helping you out. Maybe I'll call you sometime. And then bang, the next scene we realized, I guess he called.
Yeah. Well, that sounded to me very much like the stereotypical mobster. Maybe you'll do me a favor.
I thought it was
it's the Godfather on the day of his wedding.
I thought it was more. I thought it was more deft than I just thought it was like, or maybe not, and then we just bang. No, of course.
Well, and when you see the later scene with them and you see genuine affection from Vince Vaughn, then it's easier to read into the early conversation that maybe it wasn't a purely like quid pro quo.
But I think it probably almost certainly was. He knew he'd need him, or likely need him, and it turned out he did need him, and then by that time he'd moved into the town where Vince Vaughn is critical. Well, we think we don't even know if Vince Vaughn's involved in that town. We don't. Yeah,
or maybe doesn't live there, but like the town is key because of the land or whatever.
We don't know yet. Yeah. But we meet and we see Colin Farrell in this really interesting dynamic setup where he loves a kid who is clearly
not his son.
Not his son. And so perhaps
So we haven't seen the mother yet. So maybe.
When we saw the redhead with Vince Vaughn, I was like, oh my God, that's the mother. But I don't think it actually is.
No, so that although.
That would be a stretch.
That would
but
be,
let's
but
never
no, it's
say
clearly
never.
not, because we met the stepfather, and that's not happening. So so we get this kid. It seems like it's not his kid, which means it's probably the
rapist.
That is the genesis of a sexual assault.
I mean, if they wanted to make that obvious, the rapist could have been red-haired too, and he wasn't. He was regular-looking, dark-haired.
Do we see
the picture? Remember, he shows him the picture. The information that Vince Vaughn had given to Colin Farrell, you see, he's and I think we actually see a shot of him.
Right, except that who knows? Maybe that picture was the picture of someone Vince Vaughn wanted taken out, and it wasn't.
That would change the character quite significantly.
Vince Vaughn is going to turn out to be particularly evil. I wouldn't, and that is another thing I want to get to. But first, we're set up this interesting dynamic with Colin Farrell with a kid who appears to be not his biological son, and he knows that. He's not living in denial, but he's like, look, I raised this kid. I love this kid. This is. But the rape, he and his wife drifted apart. I presume his inability to handle it and his drinking caused that too. She's with what appears to be a normal probably
Fairly
good,
stable
good
guy, yeah.
stepfather.
Yeah.
And we're left to think that, that's sort of you're on Colin Farrell's side because he's tortured. And yes, okay, he's corrupt a little, but you got it. You feel sympathy for him. And then we get this shocking scene of him with the kid.
Yeah.
Forget the violence perpetrated on the father
reporter.
of the bully, but we see the way he talks to his kid, and I don't know. For a second, I thought, no, you've ruined it. You've ruined an interesting character and made him a monster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because it would have been the normal thing to do on a show would be to have the connection he has to his son be the one redeeming characteristic or the one potentially redeeming characteristic.
Right.
But when you call your son a fat pussy as you're holding him and shaking him.
I didn't want to say it. I'm so glad you said it.
I was going to say it anyway. Thankfully, Colin Farrell gave me a reason. But yeah, he's still an interesting character, just perhaps not one that we feel much compassion
Yeah,
for.
no, he's awful, but that doesn't make him any less interesting.
The line you quoted was mitigated by the fact that he had already called his son and that to me was just so shocking to see a 10-year-old boy or whatever 12-year-old boy screamed at like that. But
He didn't hit the kid, though. I did notice that. Either his son or the actual bully.
Yeah.
Which was a line they could have crossed. They chose not to.
Yeah. He just
So he's not a complete monster. He's just
no,
willing
he just
to...
broke the eye socket of the father.
Yeah.
99 and 44/100%
Yeah.
a monster.
And also beat or possibly killed the reporter. I assume just beat.
But he's sympathetic because the nice waitress cares about it.
Yes,
Right.
that's
So
true.
you know that there are good parts of him, and presumably, although the son, we had a little thing, you and I today. I'm not sure that's gonna. I'm not sure that's the way to.
No?
I'm not sure that's a good enough.
That's just if you
Clean
play for your
slate.
therapist later.
yeah.
And he's and he's a henchman. He's going around sort of just he's beating that guy up, beating the reporter up.
Yeah, he's a bagman for
Bagman.
Semyon.
So
basically.
Cenk, who I hope will hopefully be able to sit in with us, Cenk sent me an email about this episode, and he was like, "Were you as bothered by Vince Vaughn?" I'm paraphrasing, as I was. He goes out. He said he loved the casting choice, the sort of bold against type casting of Vince Vaughn as this villain. Although he's done it in what was that movie called? He played a serious villain in he did Psycho.
Psycho, but then you mean like that one like with
Cowboys, something with Joaquin Phoenix. That movie.
I was thinking of the one that was that 90s movie with like Janine Garofalo as a state trooper.
I think we're talking about the same movie.
Yeah, I'm blanking.
I think it was Joaquin Phoenix and Janine Garofalo, and it was called something cowboy piece something. I'll look it up. You guys will tell us.
Yes.
So he's done it before, but obviously it is now he's funny, kind of fat Vince Vaughn. So I think that, and I responded to Cenk that I thought that's interesting because he thought it didn't seem to work, but he's willing to be patient. I suspect we are going to get the sort of maniacal, funny Vince Vaughn that we've seen in a zillion movies that many of us like, and some don't.
Well, I was going to say, I think a lot of it has to do with what your take on Vince Vaughn is. I have not found him funny in a long time. I find him a little grating. So actually in this, he totally works for me as a villain because I don't like him on screen generally. So I don't have a problem with not liking him here.
I got you. I think we'll get. Cenk was saying not whether you like him or not. I just didn't think it worked. But I think we'll get rage from Vince Vaughn that will be interesting because I think he's capable of being a pretty good actor.
I think it's interesting because I didn't immediately read off of him, this is the obvious villain. I suppose he's going to have to be if we have the three, agents of the law on one side and him on the other. But they immediately place him in a loving, apparently, relationship with his wife.
Kelly Riley, I found that their relationship really interesting.
Yeah, that was interesting. I mean, maybe it's a matter of convenience, maybe it's very House of Cards, but it seems to be genuinely emotional. And then he's immediately put in this situation where he needs to cover for the missing guy, and he's sort of charming in his way about it. And he gets placed opposite the fairly intimidating mobster, who he's going to deal with, but I don't think so far it's been established that he's really dealing from a position of strength. I think at best he's this guy's equal. And so for me, I didn't immediately read villain because he already seems to be in danger.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Clay pigeons.
Clay pigeons.
Clay pigeons,
That's
which I like. And by the way, and then when you factor in Psycho, and then Domestic Disturbance, wasn't he the villain with Travolta in Domestic? I mean, Domestic Disturbance was so stupid.
I don't remember.
It's a bad time for America and movies.
No, but you're right, though. I think that there is more going on with him where it's not like he is necessarily like pulling all the strings. He is a guy who has his own shady dealings that he wants to see through, and that he thinks is going to take him out of the world of shady and at all, and now this murder is going to come up and
how's conflicting interests.
Hey, how's that going to screw him up in terms of his own goals, and what did he have to do with it, if anything?
What was the line that this whole thing relies on the something of interest coming together? God damn, it was the best line in the episode.
I don't know.
I don't remember.
Okay, I'm gonna look it up.
I liked. There were just a lot of parts of this I liked. The Russian guy. He's not Russian. Is that where's the other guy from? Do we know?
I was thinking Russian or Eastern European or something.
Yeah. I mean, burning out someone's eyes. That seems like his kind of move.
Yeah.
And it seems like that guy might have been vested in sabotaging the deal, looking for a reason to sabotage the deal, or killing that guy to make a better deal. Sure. Like I'm going to kill
make
this
him
guy
uncertain
to
and-
show, look, it's uncertain. You can't guarantee it. The city manager's dead. I'm not going to give you $5 million. I'm going to give you $3 million, and you're going to give me a bigger percentage back on the other end. Like that's how this is going to work out.
We have not talked about Taylor Kitsch's character at all.
No, which I also thought that was interesting.
I found him really, there's a lot going on there to unpack. I mean, clearly has, went to war, saw or did or both some terrible things. We're still deciding if Black Mountain is a place or if it's the show's equivalent of Blackwater, which I guess we'll find out.
Or an operation.
Yeah, exactly right. True. Yeah, or a mission.
And he did seem to imply that the injuries had not happened during his time in the military, right? He said it was
watched
prior
that
to
scene.
that.
I watched that scene with the closed captioning, and I watched it twice because I thought I think it was because it was a convoluted scene, deliberately so. They were his boss was clearly suggesting that there was more here, but he wanted to ease his mind. I think it was very clearly that he worked for that company. I think they worked for Black Mountain, meaning Blackwater, and that. I think my sense was, because you asked me an interesting question, do we think because he had to take the Viagra, because that's the only way he could perform with perhaps the most beautiful woman who's ever been on a screen. And
The Brink competes in that regard, but anyway.
Was he gay?
Yeah.
You wondered. And I think it was, no, I think it was just tortured. Like, whatever happened at Black Mountain was
He's still emotionally
he's just
disconnected.
horribly emotionally scarred from that, as then partly evidenced by driving 100 miles an hour on the PCH.
Right, with your lights off.
With your lights off, waiting to have a horrible accident, and then stumbling upon the body. So I like that character. They're all tortured. Like you instantly want Annie and Taylor Kitsch, looking for Taylor Kitsch. You want them, like I want to be like, oh, you guys, like she's, having what would appear to be anal sex with strange men who don't care about her, and
or demanding it and not getting it.
Demanding it and not getting it, and not connecting at all. I mean, it's sort of
Well, not wanting to connect at all.
right, not wanting to connect at all, and you badly think, oh, you and Taylor Kitsch, like, come on, connect.
Well, they both got a lot to unpack there. I mean, she's, I think David Morris is totally right when he says that she's basically lived her life to bug him.
To bug him, right? To hate what he hates.
I
mean, for a
hope
guy-
that his analysis is not 100% accurate. That would be disappointing if the show immediately dissects the character from a family member's point of view. I think he's going to be partly right.
Well,
There's gotta be more to it than
there's more to her than that. There's
Well,
just
I
a
think-
rich character, but I think a lot of the appeal of being the establishment is having been raised by that guy.
No, but I mean, look, she's got a sister who's clearly been troubled her entire life, and her dad is that guy, and that's not the kind of dad you want. He may be right about that, but she is still, in many ways, the grown-up of that family.
Sure.
So she's carrying that burden. I think he probably was right. But I liked also that sort of it was a guru who's, this, new age guy who you want to punch in the face, but you're like, well, yeah, that's large. Yeah, you may be right about a couple. You may
seemed like a
actually
nice
know.
guy.
You might have a point
You may
here.
know his daughters actually pretty well.
He's still bitter that he didn't get any residuals out of the Don Draper Coca-Cola campaign.
Who?
Was he on Mad Men?
David Orr. No, because remember he goes to the end of Mad Men. He goes to the retreat.
Right. Oh, that's right. He's just pissed about the Timothy Murphy plays Osip Agranov. Agranov is so he's Russian.
Okay.
That's the that guy.
So,
anyway,
as with season 1 of True Detective, this has, I feel, immediately plunged into characters that I'm really interested in and want to find out more about, and an overarching story that's going to get more complicated and that I want to know more about that too. So I'm I'm down for what they've got this time.
One of my favorite actors in television history is in this. Colin Farrel's partner there in Vinci, W. Earl Brown, who was in Deadwood, and that guy, already his tie comes down to here. He's like a 1950s.
He's got
guy,
that face,
and he's like, all right, if anything happens to me, you burn everything.
Yeah, the crazy porn, that was fascinating.
Oh yeah, right.
Oh, and
That statue, I gotta get one of those.
And Justin Lin directed this episode.
And next week's.
Yeah, so season 1 was all the same filmmaker, and this time we have different directors coming in. I got to say, just when you think you have seen all of the overhead establishing shots of Southern California, this show redefines them.
Yeah, and they were good. They
They were great.
Yeah, I think people are wrong. I like the show. I think it was really solid. I'm intrigued. So we'll be back next week, talk more about it. Thanks for watching, everybody.